this song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, bringing you our final episode of Season 3. Can't believe that I've gotten through this far already. The whole thing's been like a whirlwind. A little bit of behind-the-scenes disclosure. I'm recording this on Sunday, February 2nd. The show actually launches tomorrow and hitting you with 5 episodes from Season 1. But as I'm recording this, it hasn't even aired yet. So I'm a little bit further ahead than I had originally anticipated I would be. But you know what? That's perfectly okay. I've got some stuff coming up that is going to take me away from recording for a little bit. So happy to be a little bit more ahead of the game than I originally planned at the moment. That's pretty typical. That happened with Uriah Heep quite a bit, where I had different projects like album releases, working on my book, stuff like that, where I had to kind of step away from recording. So I did a bunch ahead of time. And that's kind of the beauty of the format, is that I have that ability where if I know I'm going to have a co-host, I can just skip that episode, go back to it later and record that. But I can record all my individual episodes. I mean, I could record one from Perfect Strangers right now if I wanted to. But I'm not going to do that. I'm doing them in chronological order, except for where scheduling is an issue. So anyway, welcome to our final episode of the Mark I era. I kind of, it's a little bit sad because this is the end of Rod and Nikki's time in Deep Purple, and I feel like I've just flown through this. But there's been so many great songs, so many great performances along the way. I really can't complain. This one is a bonus track that I actually first heard. My aunt had a copy of Deep Purple's compilation Purple Passages, which was a double album comprised of all Mark I material. And it included Emmaretta. And that was the first time I heard it, when my aunt let me borrow that. Eventually, she just ended up giving it to me. But yeah, it's a cool track. And for those of you who may not know, it was a kind of an open call to Emmaretta Marks, who is a singer and actress. She was on the soundtrack and movie of Hair, the musical. And I have that one on vinyl, actually. I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know the quality of it. But I happened to see that when I was at, I think it was the Antique Mall in Vegas. So I just picked it up for a few bucks. And I thought, well, that's a great one to have in my collection, because I love a couple of the songs, the versions that they did on that one. So anyway, yeah, Rod met Emmaretta somewhere in the States. And I guess he sent a letter to her. And he's like, yeah, did you get it? And wrote a song. So, yeah, it's interesting. I'm not very familiar with her outside of that movie. In fact, I'm really not very familiar with who she is in that movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And I think that was before I knew what the connection was to Deep Purple. So, but you know what is great is the song. It's a song that's a lot of fun. Got an interesting ending to it, and some cool parts along the way. So I say we just jump right into it. Our last song from Mark I, guys. Here is Emmaretta. Richie wailing away on that wah pedal opening the song. I love it. But something we very rarely hear in concert or in the studio from Ian Paice, it sounds like he gets a little off time about halfway through that and then corrects and comes back. He's keeping time on the hi-hat. It's kind of faint, but if you're, snapping your fingers along with it, tapping your thumb on your wrist, however you keep time, yeah, he's a little off about halfway through. That's really weird. May have been part of the reason it didn't make it on the album. I don't know why they wouldn't have muted that, honestly, because there's really no reason for him to be counting in the song at all. If he's setting the tempo in the background, that's fine. But that easily could have been muted on the actual final version. Again, this is a bonus track, but it was released. So There is that to consider. It's also 3 minutes and 1 second long is the file. So I'm going to guess it's more like 2 minutes and 56 seconds because there's usually like a 4 to 5 second fade or a blank space on these tracks. For some reason, they did the bonus edition that way. It's kind of weird, but that's what they did. So yeah, pretty cool. I like the opening. It's got a good groove to it. It definitely sets up the song very well. And here comes Rod. I like the short lines in the verse. It's kind of cool. It's, you know, he could fill that space, but I kind of like that there's just some openness to let the musician shine through a little bit in the transition there. Excellent bass lick from Nick Simper. Really just emotional song more than anything else. And that's the thing. He's like kind of crying out to her to get her attention. And kind of remembering maybe a conversation they had or just his experience when they met or something in his imagination. I really don't know because, you know, like I said, there's no liner notes. And I mean, we've seen that the liner notes don't really tell us that much about the songs anyway, but it's just a beautiful feel to it. I love it. It's a great tempo, perfect for telling a little bit of a story or just kind of having just these little lyrical bursts in there and keeping just along with the groove.
Oh, Emmaretta, I can't get to you to feel better. I must go now. Oh, Emmaretta, full moon's rising. Oh, Emmaretta. Oh.
Little weird click at the beginning of that passage there as Rod was saying Emmaretta. It sounds like maybe Ian hit a microphone, but it was a little bit louder than the drum mics seemed to be. So I'm not quite sure what it was, but that was a little bit interesting. And does Rod think he's a werewolf or is going to turn into a werewolf? Why does he have to go because the full moon is rising? That's kind of I don't know, kind of a weird lyric. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen or why he can't be talking to her from afar. I don't know, it's kind of weird. But you know, we're talking late 60s here. There was a lot of imagery and things in music and in lyrics. As I'm typically not a lyrical guy, I tend to just kind of hone in on certain phrases that I find raise an eyebrow or just make me go, I wonder what made him write that or say that. But the flow of the lyrics, again, like regardless of what he's saying, the audible flow of them is really quite nice. Just follows along with the song really well. Again, great transition from Nick Simper, little flourish from Richie as we go into the middle eight.
It's 1,000 miles. Oh, and I need you, child. Oh, it could drive me wild. What I feel could make it real.
I've always loved that section. Part of it being just the vocals and part of it being Nick's bass line. Man, he is just jamming through this song as normal. I mean, he's really a very colorful bass player. Exactly the opposite of me, who can barely keep up with root notes. Really, really enjoy his playing style and his sound too. I mean, it's nice and heavy. You can definitely hear that he's playing with a pick because you're really getting a good thump on that string. If you're playing finger, you can still get a good hard sound, but it's more a mellower attack because you don't have that hard pick striking it. And then Richie, I mean, just, you know, I don't know if his ankle was exhausted after this performance, but he's really working that wah pedal. I have to think Mick Box probably has ankles like Popeye, where he's just because he's a very heavy wah pedal player. So I just have to think like his endurance over 50 plus years of playing that style has to be pretty amazing. Like when I used to walk the strip 2 or 3 times a week, I used to joke that I had calves like Popeye, and I pretty much did. I mean, they were pretty solid. And then when I went down to like, you know, once a week, or when I like if I was sick and couldn't go, really started to diminish. And then after COVID, of course, they're basically like just jello sacks. But yeah, this is some really great stuff. I love this song. It's a shame it's so short, but it's kind of got everything you need. Another Richie solo I just absolutely love, especially the way it ends. And so when I started up, I'm going to rewind it a little bit just to play that final ending again. But it's you almost feel that crying out for her in the guitar solo. And this is one of those things where I always say that a guitar solo or an organ solo, whoever's going to solo, is really taking over for the singer. So they need to hold true to the emotion, to the point of the song to a certain extent. They could do it in their own fashion, but if you're doing a sad song, you can't do like some crazy rock solo and then have it make sense with the song unless the whole song is changing to fit that. So this song doesn't change. I mean, we're keeping the same tempo. We're not really changing a whole lot in the background. So although I do love Nick Simper's rhythm, I'm not hearing John Lord on this. I just realized I haven't really heard anything that he's doing unless it's just buried in the mix. But he does a lot of thickening though during songs like this or parts that this song has. But you have to be able to continue the song, replacing the singer, and keep that emotion or momentum. And I think that's what Richie really does. I feel a longing in the solo, and especially the end. I think the end really sums it up very well. So excellent solo from Richie on this over a really killer music bed.
It's 1,000 miles, oh, and I need your child, oh, it could drive me wild if what I feel could make it real. Emmaretta.
I mean, these flourishes for Ian Pace are just crazy. He's so filled with energy. He's really holding back during the verse, but for the transition, he is all over it. And we're going to get some serious Ian Pace at the end of this one. But we've got one more chorus yet.
Did you get my letter? I sent it to you. Oh, Emmaretta. Do you still feel when night is falling? Something calling. Oh, Emmaretta.
I love that gentle last word from Rod there. I just love the harmony on that, the way that plays out, slightly off from each other, which is perfect because, again, that longing should feel a little bit disconnected. And I think that just simple, not exactly doubling it was perfect. We're going to get into Ian Pace's part here for the rest of the song, but that's a nice part. We're playing into that from Nick Simper. And yeah, I am hearing a little bit of John Lord in there, I think, but not a whole lot. So he's been pretty low in the mix and not doing any soloing or anything that's outstanding, but definitely, thickening the song, holding that foundation of it together, which is very important. Not everybody needs to solo all the time or really be heard. Sometimes a contribution to a song, it's not necessarily about being heard, but what effect it has or what you would hear if it wasn't there. If that makes any sense. It does to me because I'm a songwriter, but hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And let's hear Ian Pace close this one out. Well, I was right. There's 4 seconds of silence at the end of this file. So the song's basically 2 minutes and 56 or 57 seconds, depending on the space between the opening there. I like the sound of John's keyboard there, but I kind of wish they would have let him go one more chord and ended it going up instead of down. I think that would have left us with a little bit of hope that we would that Rod or we, being in the story, would connect with Emmaretta again. The drums are pretty happy and pretty excited, so that kind of leaves you with some optimism, but that kind of contrasts the organ ending on a down note. So I think that would have been nice to just have him just like give one more chord before they faded it out. I think he played it, but they faded it out. So pretty cool ending, though. Great energy from Ian Pace. As I recall hearing him mention this in an interview at some point along the line, I wish I could remember which interview it was, but he had said that they couldn't figure out how to end the song. And so he just decided to just solo and play it, and they played it out that way. So, people tend to think of the songwriters being the ones that provide the song. But when you have a band, everybody has a little bit of influence. Typically not the drummer. People typically ignore the drummer. Hey, guys, I brought lyrics for a song. Maybe we could work on it. Oh, yeah, great. And then they just, toss them aside and they go, okay, what do you guys want to work on? And I certainly went through that in bands I was in, which was very, did not make me happy. But because I wanted to contribute, and so drummers typically historically are blown off when it comes to that kind of stuff. But Ian Pace is somebody who has had a lot of influence over Deep Purple over the years, coming up with different rhythms. I mean, Chasing Shadows was based on one of his rhythms, which was, obviously based on some standard drum parts. But an idea like this, or Burn, which we'll get to, which is a good drum solo in that, several good drum solos in that. All I Got Is You came from a phrase of his. I mean, he has had a lot of influence over the band, which I love because I think they're all such creative people. Why would you shut out any one of them and say, well, I'm the songwriter, or I'm the guitarist, or I'm the keyboardist, and we're the ones that have the ideas? Not at all. This band is very open to ideas from everybody. And there's points in their history where that becomes a little bit difficult. But, for the most part, it seems like they were very open to contribution from everyone. And why shouldn't they be? You never know who's going to come up with a good idea. All musicians are creative to some extent. Even people who aren't writers and just performers, they're still writing. They're writing solos. They're writing their way of playing a part. So everybody has their creative side to them, I think. And I really love that Ian Pace, especially being the youngest guy in the band and the drummer, that he wasn't just, his ideas weren't just shuffled off into the corner and everyone else was listened to. So kudos to Deep Purple for that. But that is our season 3 Mark 1 wrap. Last song of Mark 1. As far as I know, nothing else has been unearthed, no other instrumentals or half-finished tracks or anything like that. We've covered everything that I'm aware of. If you guys know of any other pieces that I missed from Mark 1, for the love of all creatures great and small, please let me know. If I can get a hold of it, I'd be happy to cover it. I also want to mention that on the 2000 remaster of this album, there is a BBC session that does include a live version of this. It's really good. The audio quality is a little rough, but again, why wouldn't it be? I mean, you're talking 1969. Not the greatest time in recording, but still audible. It's definitely listenable, and the band's energy is there. It's a great version of it, I will say, as little of a fan as I am of live music. But check out all of Deep Purple Mark 1. Check out that Hair soundtrack. There's some really good stuff on it. Love their version of Let the Sun Shine In. Although, I remember when I was living in Denver the first time, and I worked at 7-Eleven. I had about a 22 or 23 minute commute to my apartment. And I remember I had, it was one of those Billboard albums on a cassette in my car, and it had Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In by the Fifth Dimension. And it was a different version that was used in the Hair soundtrack. But this version is wonderful. I absolutely love it. When it gets into Let the Sun Shine In, a little Deep Purple tie-in for that of my own creation. I've always imagined it with David Coverdale singing the backing part, just to let the sun shine in, and just doing it with that deep, lustrous voice of his, but with a smile on his face, and you can hear the smile coming through. God, I'd love to hear him actually just add his voice to that track. I think it would add so much to it, really, really just take it to a whole nother level. But that's just my crazy mind, and I'm a drummer, so I'll just put that wherever it goes and wrap up this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope as the show kicks off in my real time tomorrow, I hope you guys enjoy the first 5 episodes and, everything thereafter. Maybe you'll discover something cool in a song that you hadn't thought about or didn't really pay much attention to. Maybe it'll just play a different way in your head. Who knows? I mean, that's the beauty of music, is it doesn't exactly sound the same every time you hear it. So thank you guys for listening. Please, follow the Facebook page, like my Scott Haskins podcasts on Instagram, share with your friends, anybody who, my voice is cracking like I'm Peter Brady. Share with your friends. Boy, even worse there. Share with your friends, anybody who you think might enjoy the show, might be a fan of Deep Purple if they gave them a chance, or are already a fan of Deep Purple. Make sure you're listening to Nate and John at the Deep Purple podcast. And of course, if you're interested in giving back a little bit to the show, there is a Patreon link in the show notes. But mostly, guys, just enjoy the music. That's what this is all about, is sharing the beauty of the music of Deep Purple. Coming up next, we have the transition into Mark II. And because I had nowhere to put it as far as what season should this go to, the first episode of the next season, which is going to be Concerto for Group and Orchestra, is the introductory track of Roger and Ian, which is Hallelujah. We'll see you next time for that episode. In the meantime, have a great day, guys. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.